to my Korean notebook tour. To study for the TOPIK Korean exam, I used two of these campus notebooks, which I filled up. Kokyo campus notebooks. You can buy this notebook online, so I will post the link, the Amazon link where you can get them. The pages are nice and thin, and the ink does not really seep through, and I like that they're not too big, so it's easy to finish them. And I like them so much, obviously, that I use two of the same notebook. I've spoken about this book in videos previously. This is just a grammar book. I'm not going to go into depth about it now, but I will post a link in the description where you can get this. But I basically use this to just get grammar structure. So some of the content in this book is in these notebooks. And the other book, that is the TOPIK II 한국어능력시험을 오케이, 한국어 빙 book, where they have, formats of example questions. It really helped me with my essay writing. I've just sorted the sections into 듣기, listening, 읽기, reading, and 쓰기, writing, so for easy access. So I'd highlight a bit in this notebook as well, but I would transfer or rewrite stuff or take vocabulary notes in these notebooks. I also have this separate notebook which I use specifically for vocabulary, and I've already made a video where I go through my vocabulary learning routine, so you can check out that video, and I'm not going to talk about this notebook right now. Let's start with my first notebook. This is before I got a tutor, and this was just my self-study. The numbers here indicate the number of the question from the TOPIK exam, and I got these example essays from the 한국어능력시험을 오케이 TOPIK textbook. I don't really have a color coding system. I just make sure that whatever is on the page is either 2 or 3 different colors, and my note-taking style and handwriting really changes from page to page. I do use this really thick yellow brush pen as a highlighter throughout my notebook sometimes. It's more prevalent in my other notebook. I highly recommend this brush pen if you want to quickly review your notes and have something that leaves a really strong, solid color. So do check the description where I will post the link to get that pen. Again, here you can see where I've used the yellow highlighter and just really bold plonked my notes here. I do like to review some of my vocab a few times where I go back in my notebook, so that's when I'll use a highlighter. I don't use a highlighter right at the beginning when I'm just taking notes. What I did in the beginning of this notebook is copy down some articles that are of interest to me. I'm really interested in UI UX design, that's my job, so I wrote down an article here, and on the left I just indicated the new words and their meanings. When I review for my exam, I took some pink sticky notes and I wrote some words that I found hard to remember, really big and bright, so that when I'm really quickly reviewing through my notebook, these immediately stick out. And I'm not afraid to make my pages look a bit messy or bold, so I just took some, thick brush pens and wrote big words here on the page so that when I go through it, it stands out. Before I got a tutor on italki, I had a friend who would check my essays for me. So I would write an essay. It's really terribly written. This is before I learned how to use the proper essay structure. And I would just write it down and he would go through and correct it in a red pen for me. This page, for instance, is a model example essay that comes from the TOPIK textbook, and I used my own color coding system here where new vocabulary is highlighted in green and phrases or, set phrases that will help me remember these vocab words are in yellow. Here's another sticky note that has some example grammar structures to use for the first short essay question. These are vocabulary words that I also got from a design essay online. Some of these words and example sentences come from the TOPIK II 한국어능력시험을 오케이 textbook. So I wrote them in my black vocabulary book first, and then the ones that were hard for me to remember, I wrote their example sentences here. I then highlighted the phrases that connect the main vocabulary word in green, and after my 3rd or 4th time reviewing, I went through with a yellow highlighter to highlight the things that I still didn't learn or couldn't remember. If you've watched my video on how I study Korean grammar, you'll see that I went in depth through these pages. So this is my grammar study tracker where I've marked the grammar structures that I know that I need to review or ones that are new for me. All of these grammar structures come from the yellow 빈도별 TOPIK textbook, link in description again. And I'm not going to go through this in so much detail right now because I've already made a video exactly about how I set up my pages here. Just to note that my note-taking structure and color coding system has changed since I started. So I started out with pink example sentences and a red highlighter, and that just looked ugly to me. So I changed it to having blue example sentences with a main grammar point being in pink in all my examples, and any explanations being in black pen. These pages specifically, where you can see my handwriting gets a little messy, these are from my italki lessons with my tutor, where she's talking and the lesson is going by really fast. I just jot down some key points here, some new vocabulary and ideas. These pages are not meant to look pretty or tidy. It's really just for me to get some basic ideas down during the lesson that I can review later. Okay, let's go through my second book now. This is when I started studying a lot more seriously, and it's just a continuation of notes from the previous one, but the majority of the notes here are from my tutoring sessions as well as exam practice questions. Here, for example, is a 쓰기 연습, so writing practice. So I've copied down the question here. This is exactly as it was in the past paper, and I've written down vocab words that I didn't know. I've highlighted them here in yellow. Let's see, what does this circle and arrow mean? Oh, okay, I was just trying to make connections between sentences, so I had to fill in the missing word. And sometimes there's like clues in the previous sentence about what the missing word could be, so I was just making connections there. This one I think was one of my first writing questions. It was really silly. It was before my teacher knew my level, so it was something about like the best gift you've received, which was really basic for me. So I tried to write really abstract, but I didn't even know the proper essay structure. So content-wise it was easy, but there's a lot of like notes here because I was still figuring out what the exact structure should be. These are more past exam paper questions, and the highlighter notes are really important points that I may have missed that my teacher pointed out to me after we corrected this together. Over here, again, grammar structures that appear very frequently and often in exam questions, so especially the graph analysis questions. So these are just grammar structures that I put on a note to make sure that I can check them off to see that I'm using them in my model answer. And these are more notes from my italki lesson. So, for example, what is a pie chart called in Korean, or what's a bar graph, which is a 원그래프 or a 막대그래프. Yes, I know I spelled relatively wrong. Sorry, let's ignore that. This page specifically is for question 53 in the TOPIK exam, which is the short essay based on a graph or some stats or data. I think this is one that I copied from a book, and I underlined in gray the important grammar structures that I need to remember, or things that I can repeat and use in my exam question as well. Then my italki tutor gave me a video to watch about 돈이 많으면 행복할까, like if we have a lot of money, are we happy? And I just took some notes while watching the YouTube video and learned some new words like 역설, which is a paradox. Then I wrote 중요한 문법, so I had to prepare a long essay question based on this topic. So I used this book and I looked at the writing part, 쓰기, and they have some examples of grammar structures that are commonly used in these types of essay questions. So I just took these from here specifically, a long list of important grammar structures that are good for essays, and I just jotted down ones that I think would be applicable to my topic. I did some basic research, and then the rest of the essay I actually typed out on my laptop. I type my long essays on my laptop so that I can edit it easily there. These are extra vocabulary words that I reviewed from my small black vocab notebook that I just put back in here that I still couldn't remember, and I think I went through this 2 or 3 times. The reason I know I went through it 2 or 3 times is because I use a different highlighter color each time I review my notes. So all I do is I write the vocab word, the meaning, and an example sentence. And as usual, I indicate the vocab word and any like clause or phrase that goes with it, so I can easily scan and say, okay, that's what the meaning of the word is, instead of having to read the entire sentence. Then if you watched my video review of Verbling, the online tutoring platform, these are actually my lesson notes from there. So some new words that I learned, and just, I guess, basic ideas and example sentences from the lesson. So these 2 pages are specifically from there. These pages are homework questions I did based on a previous exam. So I wrote the exam question numbers, because every exam question is exactly the same format based on its question number. And then the really bright pen is corrections that my tutor gave to me after she reviewed it with me. While reviewing the past papers, I usually make a list of vocabulary words. As you can see, my structure is really not the same for every single page. I just do what I feel like. I keep it fun for myself. I use different colors as long as I'm differentiating the Korean color with the English color or the definition to the word with some form of color coding. That works for me. I don't have a structure that I use across all notebooks. That would be really boring. Again, just more writing exercises. For instance, the blue is what they gave us in the past paper, and then the pink is the section that I wrote to put in there. Again, more sticky notes. Yes, this page, I was reviewing my notes in a cafe and I had this blank page and I thought, okay, there are a few words that I keep forgetting. Let me write them really, really big so that if I flip through, I'll see them here. So these are just important words that I struggle to remember. I went through the TOPIK exam paper and there was this question about, I think, bank accounts or investments or like savings accounts, and it was really tricky for me, and I didn't want to look up the words immediately because I wanted to put myself in the test situation where I wouldn't have access to a dictionary. So I read it twice and it was really tough. So what I did is I wrote it down in my notebook. So from the test paper on my laptop, I copied it down here. And I realized that after writing it in my notebook, I actually, when I slowed down, there were a lot of words that I could understand, and I did have to look up a few, which is these ones in pink, and I kind of connected the meanings to the words. I don't know if that makes sense, but I had to circle and make a lot of connections to see, oh, this relates to that or that relates to that. So I like to do a lot of annotations to connect ideas and thoughts and make it logical for me to understand. Here's a ton of vocabulary. This comes from one entire past paper. So I just wrote all the Korean words on the left and the English on the right. And the yellow is, again, when I'm reviewing and going through it, trying to circle stuff that I'm struggling with, especially if it's a really important word that I think I'm going to forget. I write it really, really big. Again, more past paper stuff. I also like to copy down model questions or writing sections from past papers and then just highlight the words that I didn't know. This is a listening activity, so I just did the listening exam in one sitting. Here specifically, I was writing how you can write a good introduction, body, and conclusion when it comes to essay writing, because it's very, very structured. Or example sentences of how can you start an essay. And I continued the notes here. So these are my ideas on how to write an introduction and how to write a good body. What type of thoughts should you put, like a quote, or explaining a cause of something, or inferring what something means. And then grammar you can use. I didn't finish the conclusion one. And here I tried to answer a question from the textbook, and then there was a model answer. So I was comparing my answer and highlighting where I thought, oh, that's a really good way that they put it, or oh, that's an important grammar structure that I should have used. And then important grammar structures I just indicated here. And I also split the model essay into the start of it, like what's a sentence you can use to introduce the topic, what are sentences you can use for the body, and how can you end an essay. And that's it. That is up until where I did in this notebook, and I reviewed this book about 2 to 3 times before my exam. I'm sorry that I don't have like a structure that you can follow or like a color coding system. I really take my notes very haphazardly, whatever feels nice for me, and I'm really casual when it comes to my note-taking approach. So my notebooks look completely different over time. My handwriting changes, but that just keeps the learning process engaging for me. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.